Alright, so I'm back with another tutorial on kind of these tips and tricks series. This one's exclusively in Photoshop, but sometimes there are things that you just don't want to render, or removing from the rendering will make the rendering much, much quicker. I think water is often one of those things. Modeling and texturing water in V-Ray is difficult to do and can have fantastic results. But I've actually found a kind of cool way of doing it in Photoshop that I'll share with you here. So you may recognize this photo from a couple tutorials ago. It's a cathedral in Lima, Peru. To make water, it's pretty simple. I'm just going to take my marquee selection tool and select roughly the horizon line up for the part that will be reflected. In my imagination, the water is kind of coming from these stairs outward. So if I copy this layer with Control C, Control V to paste it, I can go to Edit, Transform, Flip Vertical, and as I move that down, I need to now align kind of where that holding Shift, make sure that it doesn't get off left or right. Holding Shift is just up and down. I want to kind of align the horizon. So something like this. Already we're kind of on our way to water, and I'm going to lower the opacity to about 75% or so, maybe a little higher. You can see through it pretty well. And there's water, that easy. It's important to find kind of exactly where that mirror point is. You can see I'm looking particularly at this lady in a white shirt here. As I move down, the illusion's lost, but if you find the right spot, it becomes very apparent that that's kind of the line of reflection. I kind of like the way these lights inside are coming out here too. But we're not done. That's not everything we need. So the next thing I'm going to do is create a new composition, Control N, and it has some size. It doesn't really matter what size it is. I just want it to be of a high resolution. So I'll say OK. Oh, that is obviously not going to work. Control N for new, and I think I did 2000 by 200, so we'll go 2000 by 2000, get a square image. Then all I'm going to do is set gray and white as my foreground and background colors respectively, and go to Filter, Noise, Add Noise. And now the kind of the amount of noise here is how much is in between those two values. We can do uniform or Gaussian. Either works, but you have to have monochromatic noise. We only want black and white. If I turned off monochromatic, we'd see you'd have lots of colors in there. So maybe I'll try 300% noise. We'll say OK. This brings to the next tip. A lot of times, we'll be working with layers. Another thing we can do is to work with channels. My channels aren't open right now, so I'm going to go to Window, Channels, and now they're up here. We see we're looking at the RGB channel. We can also just isolate and look at red, or just green, or just blue. Now, we have a black and white image, so obviously the red, green, and blue values aren't really depicted here. We wouldn't see the red. But the idea is white is absolute absence of red, and black is 100% red. Same for the green and same for the blue. So if you add up 100% blue, 100% green, and 100% red, obviously you'd get black. That's how the color black is made. So all I'm going to do is take my red channel, and I'm with the kind of layer move tool up here. I don't even know the name of this tool really. That's the move tool, or you can hit V on the keyboard. I'm just going to move these pixels up some. So I'm going to zoom in so maybe we can see them. I'm going to hit the up key on my keypad 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. Then I'm going to skip green, I'm going to go right to blue. And I'm going to move that over to the left 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There, we've moved it. So now if we look at the RGB, our blue values are different than our green values, they're different than our red, because we moved red and we moved blue. So if we look at RGB, boom, we've got color. So I'm going to come back to my layer and make sure I'm not on a channel anymore. I'm clicking my layer, and I'm just going to do a filter, blur, Gaussian blur. And that, you can see, kind of takes the edge off everything and smooth things out a little bit. And as I increase it, it'll become, eventually gray, blurring everything together. And so as you want it, imagine what water is. Water is not kind of pixelated up and down. It's very soft and gentle. So this kind of looks a lot like a red and blue 3D image, where these different colors are going to be distorting the water layer in different directions. So maybe green will go up and to the left, and blue will go down and to the right, and yellow will go straight up. So by blurring them, we're going to be pushing the water in different directions. So I'm going to say OK with this. That looks great to me. I'm going to file save, and then I'm going to create a new folder and just call this water, name of the tutorial, and call this, let's see, displacement. So jumping back to my first image now, with my water layer selected, I can even name this water, I can go filter, distort, and displace. Now I can set up here how much horizontal and vertical displacement I want, stretch to fit, tile, blah, blah, blah. Default settings are fine. They're going to work just great. And I'm going to go in my water folder and click that Photoshop file I had just made. And I want you to watch the water down here. You can see how it is ripply now and not even, but it also isn't any longer in perspective. You can see that it's uniformly rippled. So I'm going to undo, come back to my displacement, zoom out, and then hitting Control A to select all, Control T to transform. I can right click and go to perspective, drag my top in and my bottom out here so we can kind of lay it down. Knowing my shot, I could actually come in and with right click again and distort and get something closer to kind of a flat water. So maybe something more like that. I just have to be certain that it is at least going to cover the water in my scene. So by coming, let's halfway up, we know that we're okay. I'm going to hit enter, Control D to deselect, and I'm going to crop this image just by dragging the top down so that we only are working with the displacement here. Enter, and I'll say save. So now it's saved to my displacement PSD. I'm just going to open that up again here. Filter, distort, displace. Say OK. Use my map. And now you can see that as they move back, the ripples do become different. Maybe I'm actually displacing too much. Yeah, you can see how ripply the water is. So maybe that's too intense. Control Alt J steps backwards so that I can undo what I did. Let's come back in. Distort, displace. Instead of a horizontal and vertical scale of 10, maybe 3. Say OK. Again, I have to select the map. So you can see there's a little bit of trial and error with this. Now let's zoom in and see what we can see. So there's still some ripple, but not as much as before. And I think the things that are important, let's see, increase this opacity of that layer. See if we can really see where a good example is. Things like this, where that kind of shadow line on the building is no longer perfect. The edges of these are no longer just kind of perpendicular or to the ground. There's just a little wobble to it. So I think that's pretty great. So I can back this off. And now let's look at one last thing, and that is layer masks. So if I set this to 82, I think it was at 80, 82 is fine. Let's just imagine that the water level isn't making its way over to this side. The whole image slopes down, so maybe that's a believable effect. All I'm going to do is click this water layer and come down and click layer mask, which is this little white rectangle with a clear or gray circle in the middle. That adds a mask on that layer. And again, now we're back into kind of the black and white world, where black is the absence of information and white is all of the information. So increase my brush size, use a softer brush, and then on this side I'll even set my opacity a little lower, maybe 25%. Let's just enter that in, 25. And as I begin to paint in here, you can see it'll lower the transparency of my water. And as I keep going, eventually it will completely go away. And you can see here in my mask, I'm painting a little black mark. I can also just come in and actually crop out certain regions. So let's just imagine that the garden was flooded. and everything on this side of this fence is no longer water. I'm going to try to come down here, just pull this across, and I'm going to fill that with black. And there you can see, no longer do I have water on that edge. It's not really making a lot of sense because the image is fairly flat, but it's a good way to control where the information is or isn't. And at any time I could come back in and draw, let's paint with white, and just feather out that edge and say that the water is kind of trickling over there. Similarly, if I came back to black, I could say that there are some areas that the water is no longer standing. Let's take it to an extreme example. I'm going to go Control Delete and fill the whole thing with black. And now I'm just going to paint puddles essentially. So here might be a puddle. I'm not reflecting that light post, so it's a little awkward. Back here might be something. So you can see only where I am painting white does my reflection map show up. So I can come in and kind of control where the reflections happen and where they do not. So that's it. That's a pretty simple technique of creating water in Photoshop instead of V-Ray for Rhino. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below. You can also like and subscribe to the video. I'll hopefully be getting more tutorials up very soon. Or if you have questions, you can email me at c.k.mcadams@gmail.com. Thanks.